Hi guys, and welcome back to my series Ask HR. Today we'll be talking about something really sad. I read this story on Reddit and I was wondering, I said I need to bring it to the public so you guys would listen and you would also advise. I'm going to be giving advice and lessons learned in this episode. Now, imagine you've just had a surgery, you're feeling sore, exhausted. Even the simple act of standing means or looks or feels like you're climbing a mountain. Then your phone buzzed. You got an email. You opened the email. It wasn't a get well soon card from your colleague or from HR. It was a letter which states you are fired. That is the story of our writer today. We will name him Mike. He's not his real name, but this is his real nightmare. Mike had just gone through a surgery, a rough one, and the worst part that wasn't even the big surgery yet. He just had the minor procedure. This was just a step before he would have his heart open. So he was going to have an open heart surgery to remove a very dangerous excess swelling in his artery. And then he got that email. The doctor was still telling him, you need to rest. Don't push yourself. Just before all of that, Mike got an email from his organization. They had packed his stuff and sent it down to him. They had stopped and closed all his accounts. And lastly, they fired him, telling all the employees that he had left the company. Let's read this story from Mike's brother. He had written it, and so let's read the story. I have a family who was fired while on an approved FMLA. If you don't know what FMLA means, that is the Family and Medical Leave Acts in America. So this story is from the United States of America. Mike had an approved 8 weeks FMLA. His surgery was in July and he returned home in August. He was just back home from his surgery when the president of this organization, who was unaware of his surgery or his leave, fired my family member via a letter through his email. Termination, total shock. I was just reading this and I was about to scream, this is totally unfair. And I had to pause because I was asking myself all of these questions. What went wrong? Was the president not aware that Mike had gone on leave? Was HR not involved? How did the president even send a termination letter to somebody without consulting with HR? Then I paused and I told myself to continue reading because the story just got juicier. Now, the president of the organization had no idea that my family member was on leave and did this without consulting HR. Okay, at this point, I'm sort of feeling great. HR did not type that letter. Okay, that's good. Couple of days later, we got a notification stating that they had messed up and wanted to reinstate his employment. The amount of stress our family had gone through, and finding out that our family member who is about to have an open heart surgery has been extremely tasking for everyone. Browsing through what it seems like the company did the ultimate no. Should we pursue legal action? That is what the writer, who is a family member of Mike, right, has stated. And now I'm wondering, let's calm down and let's pause. What is FMLA? FMLA is a Family and Medical Leave Act in the United States. So it's one of their employment laws in the United States of America. It provides employees with the right of up to 12 weeks unpaid leave, right? while their job is protected and they can have this every year. FMLA is something that every organization, that's public organization, elementary schools, secondary schools, and organizations that have more than 50 employees. So, based on the definition of this law or of this act, it means that this organization, one, has more than 50 employees. It also means that this organization adheres to this law, so they comply to this law, right? So why did this happen to Mike? What went wrong? What mistake did they do? How did it all happen? That's a big story. Not to bore you with all of these legal things, I want to believe that Mike had applied for this leave because it was approved by HR. And from what we heard, HR was not consulted, right? How did the president do such a thing without consulting HR? How did the president pack his stuff? Was he a direct report to the president? Did he report directly to him? Is that the reason why he had to pack his stuff, even collected the company's car keys or requested for the company's car keys? So these are all of the questions that is running through my mind, and I'm sure will be running through the mind of anybody watching this video. I want us to drop down in the comment section if you have seen anybody or even witnessed something like this where, there was a drastic move by your organization without HR being involved. So not to bore you with all the legal terminologies and everything, I want to believe that Mike applied for this leave. I want to believe that he was eligible to apply for this leave. And I also want to believe that his company complies, by having more than 50 employees, and that's why they comply with that act. But what went wrong? That's the big question. What happened? What sort of mistake is this? And reading from what Mike's family member had written down here, the biggest confusion for Mike right now and for the family is the fact that anything could happen. This organization could pull the plug, right? If you're saying you reinstated me, you made a mistake, not telling me what caused the mistake or, what exactly happened. Nobody's explaining to this individual that was hospitalized, just returned from a surgery, barely able to work, feeling like, oh, I've got this, my next 6 to 8 weeks for my recovery covered, and only for him to get that message. And 2 days later or a couple of days later, he got another message that, he's been reinstated. They didn't even wait for him to get back on his feet. Nobody had a meeting with him. This wasn't discussed. Why would an organization terminate an employee's employment or contract without having to meet with them? That's the bone of contention. That's the big question, right, in all of this. So I'm calm and I'm wondering what's going on in all of this. Let's calm down and read other people's comments. So somebody commented and said, was there a performance issue? What was the reason for the termination? Did they not know that he had gone on the FMLA? Was he not approved? Has he overstayed his approved time off work and did not come back? Hence, why they had no protection? Someone else said, if the president didn't know he was on FMLA, then the firing wasn't illegal. You can fire on FMLA. You just can't be fired because you were on FMLA. I was wondering. Of course, the story didn't say he was fired because he was on FMLA. The story said he was fired while on FMLA. But the question is, even if you're firing somebody, even if they've got the right to fire somebody, they need to speak to him. Another person said, get a lawyer, speak to somebody. Somebody can be fired while on FMLA. What was the reason for the termination? If they had poor performance and maybe they had a terrible attitude, they can be fired. While I understand all of these comments, I've just taken a few of the comments actually. While I understand some of the comments, it's really important that we ask ourselves what must have happened. So what are the lessons that we could learn from this story as, as people? So if I were Mike, my first reaction will be to calm down. They made a mistake. But the first things first is I would like to speak with HR. I would like to know the why behind all of that. Because just like Mike, he's now feeling, what if I really need that big surgery? And we all know that insurance covers some surgeries. And because he's employed, he'll be entitled to those insurance. He's paying his insurance premium every month. If he doesn't have a job, if his insurance is cut, what does he have to do? So if I were Mike, my first point of call would be get well. My health is important, of course, more than any other thing. But I would write HR back asking the very important question of what happened. I understand it was a mistake. I understand I've now been reinstated, but what happened? And secondly, my second question to HR would be, why didn't anybody call me for a meeting? I really need to understand. I'll be reading my contract. What does my contract say in terms of terminating my contract of employment? What does the organization have to do? What do I need to do? What are the responsibilities of both parties in this contract? If the organization's responsibility is that they would call for a meeting, they will hear my side of the story, to give me a fair hearing, which is best practice, isn't it? Then I will be questioning that. If it's an organization where there are no rules, there are no policies, you don't have a handbook, and it's just, today you don't even have a contract of employment, you don't really stand a chance, because there is nothing binding you and the organization, and they can do anything that they want to do at will. So the first thing is speak to somebody, seek legal advice, right? That's the first thing. Speak to an HR person, write a letter. I usually like to document things as much as possible. Document everything. Go back and check your emails. Have you been on probation, or were there times when they said you have been given 1 month, and after 1 month, if your performance does not improve, you'll be sacked? Check on everything. Just check everything around you in terms of communications that you received from the office. Then seek legal advice. Speak to your union rep if you have a trade union rep. But most importantly, speak with HR also, because you want to understand the company's law. You might not know, and it's okay for you not to know if you've not read it. But what HR is there to do is to interpret the organization policies to you. So speak to HR even whilst you're speaking with your lawyer, or whilst you're speaking with the trade union. Find out from HR what the organization law or what the organization policy covers. Then, lastly, write everything down. Ensure that all of the communication you're getting from HR is documented. Ensure that all the advice you're getting from your lawyer, you're documenting that, and you're going back to think. I wouldn't sit here and say to Mike that he should sue the organization, because, again, we don't know the content of the other letter that he received, whether it was an apology, we don't know what they said in that letter. The family member has not written that story totally to help us understand what was written in the letter. So rather than running to sue an organization that probably has apologized to you, it's more important that you understand why they took that action in the first place, and what are the policies that guides you in future should anything happen. And also, I would say get a backup plan. So if you've got a private insurance, or if you don't have a private insurance, now is the time to start thinking of a private insurance coverage. So because you know that you've got an upcoming surgery, and anything can happen. The fact that you've been reinstated doesn't mean that you could go back to, or it doesn't mean that you could go back to work and not get sacked, or doesn't mean that the company would run into bankruptcy. The most important to everybody that is listening is that you should know your rights. As an individual, what law guides the country that you live in? What labor law, most especially, guides the country that you live in? You want to check that, you want to know the labor laws, the laws that's guiding you as an employee, and even as an employer, you want to know all of that, because you have to protect yourself. You don't know. We're all humans. Humans make mistake. People can send the letter to the wrong person. In this case, that was not the case because they packed his box. They asked for the company car. They told staff members that he had left, so his name was not mixing with any other person, isn't it? And they emailed him the termination letter. But in cases where things like that happen, you also want to protect yourself. And the only way that you can protect yourself is by knowing, building your knowledge, know about the law, know about everything that is happening around you. It's quite important that you know that. Now, if you know somebody that has gone through something like this, because this is a story that I read and I believe that it is true. While reading the story, I noticed that the family member was answering questions, comments, he was responding to comments, he was replying to people's questions on the platform, people that wanted to understand so they can give their best advice. So if you're going through something like this, um, it's real, it happens. I've stated some lessons, I've stated some points that we all have to do or know so that we don't find ourselves in this situation. But most importantly, I would like to hear your comments right down in the comment section. Advice to Mike, questions to Mike, like what some of the questions that I'm asking. What happened? Was there a performance issue? What was there anything in the background before that we are not aware of, or he hasn't, or the family hasn't told us about it, or even better still, that the family doesn't know about? So if you are in that situation, please drop your comments. I would like to hear your questions. It's really interesting because this is a part of my job. I love HR. And like I said, the first question I asked was HR consulted? And reading down that write up, HR wasn't consulted. So that's great. That's fine. But actually, there are times that HR will be consulted and things will go wrong because we're all humans. So if you've had any experience, I'd like you to drop that in the comment section. Please stay healthy and stay informed. Until we meet in the next video. Bye.